Hi, I am Daina Gerona, third-year student taking Bachelor of Arts in Communication at Negros Oriental State University, and this is my output in MC311, Intro to Graphics and Photojournalism. Today, let's discuss Lesson 8.4, Major Types of Freshwater and how are human activities affecting them. At the end of the lesson, students are expected to understand what is freshwater, to know the major types of freshwater, to define each major types of freshwater, and to understand how our human activities affect freshwater. First, let's define and understand what is freshwater. According to UC Museum of Paleontology, freshwater is defined as having a low salt concentration, usually less than 1%. Plants and animals in freshwater regions are adjusted to the low salt content and would not be able to survive in areas of high salt concentration. Fresh water starts out as water vapor that has evaporated from the surface of oceans, lakes, and other bodies of water. When this vapor rises, it leaves salts and other contaminants behind and becomes fresh. Water is an amazing element. It is unique because it can be naturally found as a solid, liquid, or gas. As lakes, oceans, rivers, and streams increase in temperature, some water will change from liquid to gas, collecting together into clouds of moisture. As these clouds float over cooler seas or land, some of the moisture falls as rain or snow. Rain and snow that falls on the land, these waters flows to the sea, starting the cycle over again. Fresh water is divided into its major types. These are ponds and lakes, streams and rivers, and wetlands. First, let's characterize what are ponds and lakes. A pond is a body of water that is smaller. It also might be formed artificially, meaning a machine came in to dig out your pond. However, not all ponds are small. Some are relatively large in size. Additionally, some form naturally over time. How and why pond came into existence is important, but not as important as the traits which make it a pond. There are some wildlife and ponds. It includes pond skaters, water snails, leeches, and worms, water beetles, water boatmen, freshwater mussels, and larvae. Next, we have lakes. Lakes can be formed by a number of natural and artificial processes, just like huge sheets of ice called glaciers. There are three more ways lakes can be formed. First, tectonic activity. Many lakes have formed as a result of tectonic movements of the earth crust. Second, volcanic activity. Lakes formed by volcanic activity tend to be relatively small, and there are many other types of lakes exist in the form of natural processes. Ponds and lakes. Ponds and lakes may have limited species diversity since they are often isolated from one another and from other water sources like rivers and oceans. Lakes and ponds are divided into three different zones, which are usually determined by depth and distance from the shoreline. The topmost zone near the shore of a lake or pond is the littoral zone. This is the warmest since it is shallow and can absorb more of the sun's heat. It sustains a fairly diverse community, which can include several species of algae, rooted and floating aquatic plants, grazing snails, clams, insects, crustaceans, fishes, and amphibians. The near-surface open water surrounded by the littoral zone is the limnatic zone. The limnatic zone is well lighted and is dominated by plankton, both phytoplankton and zooplankton. Plankton have short lifespans. When they die, they fall into the deep water part of the lake or pond, the provandal zone. This zone is much colder and denser than the other two. Little light penetrates all the way through the limnatic zone into the profundal zone. The fauna are heterophous, meaning that they eat dead organisms and use oxygen for cellular respirations. What are streams and rivers? Streams are bodies of water that have a current. They are in constant motion. Geologists recognize many categories of streams depending on their size, depth, speed, and location. Creeks, brooks, tributaries, bayous, and rivers might all be lumped together as streams. In streams, water always flows downhill, but the form that downhill movement takes varies with rock type, topography, and many other factors. Rivers. Rivers are the largest types of stream, moving large amounts of water from higher to lower elevations. People have used rivers since the beginning of civilization as a source of water, food, transportation, defense, power, recreation, and waste disposal. Streams and rivers. These are bodies of flowing water moving in one direction. The characteristic of a river or stream changes during the journey from the source to the mouth. The temperature is cooler at the source than it is the mouth. The water is also clearer, has higher oxygen levels, and freshwater fish such as trout and heterotrophs can be found there. What are wetlands? Wetlands. Wetlands are areas of standing water that support aquatic plants. Marshes, swamps, and bogs are all considered wetlands. These support different species of animals such as shrimp, shellfish, and various grasses. Wetlands are found from the tundra to the tropics and on every continent except Antarctica. There are two categories of wetlands. First, coastal or tidal wetlands. They are closely linked to our nation's estuaries, where seawater mixes with fresh water to form an environment of varying salinities. The salt water and fluctuating water levels combine to create a rather difficult environment for most plants. Second, the inland or non-tidal wetlands. They are most common on flood plains along rivers and streams in isolated depressions surrounded by dry land along the margins of lakes and ponds, and in other low-lying areas where our groundwater intercepts the soil surface or where precipitation sufficiently saturates the soil. How does human activities affecting them? Disrupted water cycle. In the natural landscape, rainfall is absorbed by land. This water is then slowly released even during periods of dry weather. As forests and fields are altered from natural to urban and suburban land, portions of the land become covered in roads, parking lots, and rooftops, not designed to absorb water. These impervious surfaces have an extreme impact on streams. Water flows of these surfaces often very quickly and cannot seep into the ground to replenish groundwater sources or streams. This disruption in the natural water cycle changes the amount of water, the volume of water, and the timing of water flowing from the land. It can lead to more intense floods. This change can also affect the reproduction of freshwater animals. Next, barriers to flow. Dams interrupt the free flow of water, converting otherwise free-flowing rivers essentially into standing pools of water. Straightening and deepening a river can negatively affect water quality and fish migrations. Seasonal and daily shifts in water flow and water level may negatively impact reproduction of some freshwater animals. Overuse of water. Overuse of water, agricultural irrigation, domestic consumption, and urban industrial use may lead to water scarcity. Pumping too much water from underground supplies or river and streams can result in dried up river beds and wetlands. The results can be catastrophic for wildlife and for human communities alike. Pollution. Pollution decreases the quality of fresh water. This is caused by a combination of runoff from agricultural chemicals, poorly managed and sometimes out-of-date industrial processes, and lack of adequate treatment for sewage and other urban waste. This pollution can lead to an immediate decline in the number and types of animals, including fish and waterfowl, as well as a decrease in recreational activities and the loss of livelihoods. Sometimes the effects of pollution are more subtle, only becoming clear after toxic substances have built up in food chain for many years, causing birth defects and diseases such as deformities in amphibians and cancer in humans.